So now that we talked about Slack security risk and mitigating Slack risk, I want to talk about the potential consequences of data exposure. So in the past year, there have been several high-profile incidents, such as last summer's Twitter hack. You can see these on the right, and then EA's hack this year, that have illustrated the importance of adopting a zero trust mindset when it comes to using platforms like Slack. So in the case of Twitter, last summer, July of 2020, the threat actor who infiltrated Twitter had gotten into Twitter's organization via social engineering. They moved laterally through the org until they had access to Twitter's Slack instance. And within the Slack instance, they kind of found the keys to the kingdom. So they found credentials to Twitter's backend, and this allowed them to hijack high-profile accounts like former President Barack Obama, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. What they ended up doing with these accounts was running a Bitcoin scam, driving money to their own wallet. But you can imagine with access to almost any Twitter account, the type of chaos that could have occurred. So we're kind of fortunate that they only did a Bitcoin scam. But this kind of highlights that data exposure risk is real, and that you could have historical data exposure risk at any time. You could have proliferation of data, and without the ability to kind of look into what has already been shared in your Slack instance, it's just not clear what could be there. It could be things like, in this case, engineers sharing a credential that has been left in Slack for some time. In the case of EA, we have a more sophisticated attack vector. The threat actor used a cookie replay attack basically to log in as an employee, and then they talk to tech support as an employee, impersonating an employee, to request a two-factor reset on some accounts that they then use to siphon data from EA. This incident is obviously different from the Twitter hack, but it still highlights that zero trust mindset being of importance here. And what this means is effectively teaching employees not to implicitly assume that everybody on the Slack instance is trustworthy, not to share sensitive information within inappropriate channels. And then on your end, as a security practitioner, the importance of proactively discovering and remediating incidents of data exposure that have either already occurred, or having the ability to kind of inspect content in real time and prevent the proliferation of data going forward in the future. And so with this, Brent, my next question is, how do you approach managing security risk that may have already occurred or already exist versus future risks that you anticipate happening?
A couple of different ways to do that is one, you have to have a historical baseline, right? It's always important to run a historical baseline against all of your existing data when you implement something like this, because, for example, in GitHub, I mean, Bluecore's GitHub instance had already been around for 4+ years when I implemented the Nightfall technologies in there, which means that I can't just look at what's happening today and tomorrow and in the future. I do need to take a historical look and get a cleanup and get a baseline set. So it's absolutely critical to do that. But then going forward, it's fantastic to have that live alert, right? That can tell you immediately when something's happening. I can tell you that the Slack technologies, the Slack technology as it's on its own, but then coupled with Nightfall, really kind of makes me and my team look like ninja heroes or something like that a lot of the times, because somebody, in fact, literally just before this call, I got a Slack notice that somebody had posted a file that had a bunch of email addresses in it, right? And I was like, oh, that's one of my triggers. I don't want email addresses like in quantities, and that file was removed from Slack within 90 seconds, right? That's pretty good. And also, I managed to get in the little micro education session with the offending party. I said, hey, don't put those things there. And he's like, oh, I'm super sorry. You're right. That doesn't belong there. So, like you said, two sides. One, you got to do the historical. You got to clean up. You got to deal with the retention scenarios and so forth that they apply to your policies, and then having that live feed that tells you exactly what's going potentially wrong in your organization from a data location, data hygiene perspective is critical.